Hi, everyone. This is Dave, doing something a little different. I'm gonna do a little unscripted, little unedited video. I was thinking of just putting this on Patreon, but I'll upload it because it's not gonna be like an actual edited Dead Topics video. The reason I'm making this is because there's something that I want to ramble about, and that's The Boys, specifically season 4. I won't do a Dead Topics on it because it like came out very recently, and if I'm going to talk about The Boys on that at all, it'll probably be like the earlier seasons later on or something like that. And I have watched it, and if you've seen this channel or seen some other videos, you may know or not that The Boys is a series that's very near and dear to my heart. I liked seasons 1 through 3. I think season 1 was probably the best, personally, and I want the series to be as good as it possibly can be. And I think season 4 made a few slip ups that caused it to not be the best season. I want to say that I don't hate it as much as a lot of other people seem to. A lot of people just fucking hated this season, thought it was terrible. I thought it was like serviceable, but it was pretty mid for the most part for me. And I think there's a lot of things they could have done way better. And I wanted to talk about that, and I'm going to do it in this sort of ramble format because I don't want to edit together an entire video about this, and also I want to stall and not have to continue watching Titans because that series is draining my soul from my body if I still had one. So I have some bullet points here of things that I just wanted to touch on. So starting with like the plot of the series, basically it all revolves around the previous spin-off show, Gen V, in which they essentially created a virus that could kill superheroes, and everybody wants that because they want to kill superheroes really badly because superpowered people are a problem. So people are hankering for this virus. Now, when I came into it, I didn't know if the Gen V stuff was gonna be like you had to watch it to understand what was going on or not. It seems like it's leaning towards you don't have to watch Gen V to fully understand it. There are some Gen V plot lines, but all of them get like spelled out in the show itself, and a lot of it is all right. But I think there's a few things that go wrong throughout the season that cause the main story not to work as well as it possibly could. uh, Starting with Sister Sage. So this is a character that people seem to be very split on. I personally thought they were all right, but the way that they're like created and set up puts them at, it sort of writes them in a corner, uh, per se, because Sister Sage is a character who has superpowers, and their only power, other than mild regeneration, is that they're like insanely smart. They are the smartest person on the entire planet. So obviously, when you have a character who has a power like that, it kind of becomes a challenge to write them. And the reason I say this is because I've seen videos talking about her where basically they say, "Oh, they don't have her act like super intelligent. They just have her like do stuff off screen, and then we're supposed to go, oh, she's super smart." But the thing is, it's not enough to write Sister Sage as being an intelligent character. She's not someone like I don't know, Sherlock Holmes, for instance. People make fun of the Sherlock show because it writes Sherlock in a way where he essentially just solves everything off screen sometimes, and we're supposed to go, oh man, this guy's so smart, even if they don't show us directly him being smart. It's just things the audience couldn't possibly figure out. But the thing is, Sherlock Holmes is like a human. He's a really smart human, but he's still just a guy. So it's possible for a guy to be really good at solving mysteries. Like a person in the real world can be really good at solving mysteries. Nobody in the real world can be the smartest person on the entire planet, in every single aspect, because Sister Sage is not a human, she's a super being. And if you're going to write someone who is not only smarter than you, but smarter than literally everybody on the planet, it becomes kind of a challenge because it's not enough to show her being smart because anybody can like do something smart. She needs to be the smartest person possible. So the only way to actually convey that is to just have her be like this sort of clairvoyant who can just predict everything for some reason. Like she's got an algorithm in her brain that just lets her figure all this stuff out, even if to us it would seem impossible. It's sort of like I would call it the illusion of intelligence, where you essentially have a character just do something off screen and say, "Oh, I predicted it the whole time. It was so obvious." As a way of conveying that, okay, this person is so smart that they're just not human. So I really would struggle to come up with a way to write Sister Sage in a way that's more showing than telling, because again, she is not just smart, she is the smartest. And when you're a writer, you're obviously not the smartest person on planet Earth, so how do you write something like that without doing a sort of illusion, like a magic trick, to try and trick the audience into thinking this person is actually insanely intelligent? So that to me is kind of a problem, because there are certain things that others have pointed out where her plan only works if very specific things happen that she doesn't really have a way to know about. So one of those things is Butcher throughout this season. Basically, he has a tumor inside his body that's like amped up on Compound V, and it gives him superpowers. Essentially, it's like venom powers. He can shoot out tendrils, and the tumor has a mind of its own or whatever, which is pretty cool. I like that. But Sister Sage, from what we know, doesn't seem to know about the virus or Butcher's tumor coming to life or anything about Joe or anything like that. So how on earth could she have known that Butcher was gonna kill Neuman at the end? Like, there's no way she could have predicted that. Neuman is one of the strongest superheroes on the entire planet. She can literally blow anybody up with a stare, control the blood inside their body. She can potentially regenerate like the other girl can, and she's like essentially indestructible. So how would Sister Sage have predicted that like Butcher wouldn't have would have killed him? That doesn't make any sense. And she doesn't know about the virus either, from what we've seen. Maybe she just knew about the virus the whole time, and that's how she thought it would happen. But I feel like if she knew about the soup virus, she probably would have dealt with it, because just having an active soup virus out there is like a major wrench in any plan she could come up with. Like Butcher having that is a big problem. So you'd think she'd want to go, okay, yeah, we should deal with this virus, right? Maybe she just didn't tell Homelander because Homelander might like freak out and ruin the plan or something. But I feel like she would have some kind of backup for the virus, like some, I don't know, have a bunch of scientists cook up like a vaccine or something. But from what we know, she doesn't know about the virus. Maybe they're going to reveal in season 5 that she knew the entire time, but I don't think she does from what we know so far. So, like, how does that work exactly? Like, the only thing I could come up with is maybe she didn't think killing Neuman was necessary as long as she got the footage of the other guy, like the person who's running for president, so that they could put him behind bars. But even then, like, having Neuman alive would be a massive problem. Like, what is Sage going to do if Neuman just blows her head up and pretty much everybody else at Vought? Like, the only person who we potentially think could survive that is Homelander. So like that could be a huge problem if she just blows up Sage's head. So yeah, there's stuff like that where it has to be she's just clairvoyant. She just knows everything, and that's not very interesting from like a storytelling perspective, because again, it's just telling, not showing. It's like not showing how she did this, just saying, okay, she did this. Just take it on board. I hesitate to call it narrative gaslighting, but it really does feel like they're just going, okay, she just knows. Don't ask how. You don't. It's beyond your comprehension, and it just feels kind of lazy. So the thing with the Sister Sage is I don't hate her as a character personally. I just think that writing something like that is a very big challenge. It almost borders on like eldritch horror. Like, how do you describe something like that? How do you describe a person who's literally so smart nobody on planet Earth can compare to them? It's a big challenge, and I don't think they were fully equipped to handle something like that. When it comes to Sister Sage as a character, I think she has a lot of interesting character moments, and she can be pretty intimidating because of the fact that she's so intelligent. But other than that, like having super intelligence just as a power, it becomes kind of a problem for the story. So moving on to Neuman, I will say Neuman is probably my favorite character in the show. I know a lot of people, some have divisive opinions on her and how she was handled. I think she is probably like my favorite character for a couple of reasons. One, she is a terrifying villain. She has a terrifying power. Her actor has a great presence, And just every time she's on screen, there's this level of tension that I don't think can be described. Because having the power to just blow up somebody's head with a stare is horrifying. And if someone has watched some of my other works, they may know I may have borrowed that ability for someone who, she who must not be named. So, if you know, you know. But having the ability to just look at someone and they blow up is horrifying. Not to mention, she's pretty much indestructible. You could shoot her in the head and she'll just be fine, even if it's point blank. So that is a horrifying concoction of powers. And pretty much the only person who can actually stand up to her is Butcher with his tumors and Homelander. And everybody else is essentially just like a walking target to her. So that makes her a terrifying villain. And not to mention, nobody knows she's a soup, at least publicly. She is being put in a position of power, and she, at one point, is literally one kill away from being vice president or just being pushed up to the president. So, yeah, Neuman's terrifying. And I think she's a really cool character, and her interactions with the other characters are always perfect. The actor's great. So yeah, I really like Neuman in this. Now, at the end, she dies. They rip her in half. I've seen some people say that they wasted this character, it shouldn't have died. I was a little surprised when they just ripped Neuman in half, but with the way they set up the story, she was at the end of her rope. She was going to the, okay, I can't work with Homelander anymore. This is bad. I want to save my daughter. So her getting killed off kind of makes sense. Uh, I can't say that I'm like 100% happy with how they handled it, but I thought it was fine. I am sad to see her go because she was a wonderful villain. But yeah. So, moving on to my next point here, I will be upfront with you. We talked about my favorite character. Let's talk about my least favorite character, Firecracker. Firecracker has to be the biggest fumble in the entirety of The Boys. Like, everything else I'm about to talk about here, even like some of the more controversial stuff, I think Firecracker was the biggest fuck up that they had this season, and genuinely, I think she's the worst thing in it. So, Firecracker had potential to be interesting, and they just refused to do it. So the first thing that's kind of funny, this is outside the series, but she was she made her debut in a Call of Duty of all things. She was released as a Call of Duty skin before the show even came out and before we knew anything about her. So I like to jokingly refer to her as a Call of Duty character because she was a Call of Duty character before she was even in The Boys, which I think is funny. They just like straight up spoiled the whole ass character in Call of Duty before the show even came out, which was so weird. But regardless, Firecracker is set up to be essentially like a counter to Starlight. That is her essentially point, I guess, in the story at the start, at least, to be a sort of anti to Starlight. She hates Starlight, and that's because when she was young, Starlight essentially spread a malicious rumor about her to get her taken off, so that Starlight could, steal the spotlight. I am going to have to talk about Starlight here while I'm talking about Firecracker because they are connected. It's hard to talk about one without the other. So maybe you could just call me a fake fan. Maybe I just didn't notice. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention to Starlight throughout the seasons. And if so, feel free to call me out. But I don't think they have set up Starlight being narcissistic, like a malicious bitch, someone who wants to take other people out of the game to push herself up. Throughout the entire series, she has been portrayed as like a goody two-shoes, wants to do the right thing type of character. She may not always succeed, but that's what she wants, right? So this like evil, catty version of her that Firecracker is talking about, we haven't seen even once, and it's kind of weird to me how the writers just kind of pulled this character trait out of nowhere and they just expect us to buy it. Like, Firecracker just goes, you did all this evil stuff to me, now I want my revenge. And that would work if we saw Starlight acting this way and she needed a character correction. I will talk about, like, the shapeshifter thing later, but it really feels like they're putting Starlight in situations where she needs to do character growth for a character that she isn't. Like, she's not growing because she was never in this sort of catty evil state to begin with. Like, we never see that. So it seems like she's already done that growth and they're making her do it again even though she already did it off screen, and like this whole past stuff is just coming back up out of nowhere. Like we don't get any flashbacks to her doing this, I don't think. Uh Again, it has been a while since I've seen seasons 1 through 2, so maybe it came up and I'm just forgetting about it. If so, my bad. But from what I remember, we haven't seen this before. So Firecracker just coming out of nowhere and saying "you're a bitch," blah blah blah, is not really compelling because we don't we don't see this. So it feels like the writers are putting her in a position where, okay, her past actions are coming back to haunt her, and now she needs to grow as a person, right? And they take steps towards that, but even that doesn't really work because Firecracker is a horrible person, and it's such to a comedic degree that she can't be taken seriously. So this comes into my second point about Firecracker. I cannot take her seriously as a villain. I don't think anyone can. So first of all, she's a joke. She is a joke character. That's just what she is. She is treated as a joke constantly, and it's to a degree where you just can't take her seriously in any scene. She first of all, she's I don't want to say like, oh god, how do I put this? So first of all, she's over sexualized. I don't want to say that as like a, oh no, you can't have sexual characters. That's not what I'm saying. But she's done in a way that's obviously meant to be like comedic, like, oh, Vought is, pushing out her sexual traits for marketing purposes, and that's funny. That's fine. They did something similar with Starlight, but the thing is, it's done in a jokey way. So even her design, like, you can't really take her seriously because it's very obvious they're trying to do like a bit there. And she is also, this is very important, weak as hell. She might as well just be a regular human. Her powers suck. She can make little sparks, and she's quote unquote strong, but she gets beat up by regular dudes, so not really. And the first time Starlight and her fight, Starlight beats her into the ground to such a degree that it is a slaughter. That was not a fight. That was like pest control. She just like bodied her. And like Firecracker just sucks in every fight. There's one point where she's like running at the end and she gets tired and has to resort to guns to kill people because she's so weak. And I cannot take her seriously at all. Because she is not a physical threat. She is not a like emotional threat because Starlight doesn't have this character she's attacking. And the only real threat she provides is to Starlight's image, which I will talk about in a bit, but still, I just can't take her seriously because she's just treated as a joke. She's like a conspiracy theorist, and that is played up to be a joke. Like, oh, look at how crazy these people are, essentially. So every part about her screams that she is a joke character that you're not meant to take seriously, but they play up this, like, feud with her and Starlight like we're supposed to take it seriously, and I just can't because she is such a joke of a character. Like, another thing I will say is the dichotomy between her and Homelander is, let's just say, unique. There's a very particular scene that I won't touch on, but you know what I'm talking about. And it again is just played up as a joke. So every part of her is a joke that I can't take seriously. Like, obviously, characters in The Boys can be still set up to be jokes and then be taken seriously. Like, Homelander and Soldier Boy have a ton of jokey scenes, but the thing is, Homelander and Soldier Boy are terrifyingly strong. Like, if you're in a room with Soldier Boy, he could just beat the shit out of you. Like, he beats the shit out of Starlight, he beats the shit out of Kimiko, he beats the shit out of Butcher. He is ridiculously strong. So you take him seriously because he could kill you. Like, he is ridiculously powerful. Homelander could probably burn half the planet down if he wanted to. So he is a very serious threat, even if he is, like, pathetic, because of his strength. Like, he can just kill everyone in a room and nobody can stop him, and that's what makes him terrifying. Firecracker doesn't have that because she's not a physical threat, so all we have is just the jokey bits and no bite to her bark. And that makes her not really that interesting as a villain. And she is made out to be a terrible person, so we can't even like sympathize with her when she wants to go against Starlight, because they try to make her as terrible as possible, I guess to make Starlight look better, even though Starlight doesn't need to look better because all this evil stuff she supposedly didn't even happen. It's kind of like, I want to say the bit in WandaVision where they try to make Wanda look as good as possible despite the fact that she kidnapped and tortured 3,000 people. But in this, Starlight didn't even do the bad thing that the authors want us to feel like better for her about. So it doesn't even work in that aspect. Firecracker just seems very weird to me, and it just doesn't work personally. What I would have done with this is split Firecracker into two completely different characters. You could have the one Firecracker who is like the conspiracy theorist joke character who just shows up in like video clips and is just making fun of Starlight for whatever reason. You don't need to have her show up on screen. She does, or well, she can show up on screen, but she doesn't need to show up physically. She can just be like a podcaster superhero because they have a lot of those. She could be like the news reporter guy who just like makes newscasts and says jokey stuff. If they want to do that bit, they can do that bit. Just have it be a different character. And then have the actual Firecracker be someone who's competent, someone who's strong, and someone whose only motivation, she's not evil, she's not like doing the weird shit with Homelander, she just wants to take down Starlight because Starlight wronged her, and she wants revenge, and she thinks Starlight needs to be brought to justice. She's actually convinced Starlight's the bad guy. If you wanted to, you could give her like powers like Jubilee has in the X-Men series, where she shoots like the firework blasts to counter Starlight's light blasts, and maybe give her the ability to fly too, but do it better than Starlight, so she's actually like, oh, a counter to Starlight. Oh, this girl can do the things that I can do, and maybe she actually has a point. Maybe I have done like bad things in my past, and Starlight actually has to confront that. If you wanted to go like all out with it, maybe you could have that version of Firecracker realize how terrible Homelander is slowly over time, and the incident with Webweaver is like the breaking point where she's like, okay, I can't work with these people anymore, maybe Starlight is right. And the thing is, if you want to paint Starlight as the bad guy, right, like to give her something that she feels bad about, you don't have to make something up, because you already have options. First and foremost, she's working with the Boys. How many members of the Boys have committed flagrant acts of murder, have been completely evil, or have done terrible things? Like, nearly all of them. Frenchie and Butcher alone probably have enough bodies attached to them to, like, just fill a dump truck. So, the fact that Starlight is working with a serial murderer, and Butcher, of all people, is perfect ammunition for this other Starlight to go, hey, you're working with these people who do terrible things, like, maybe you're the bad guy. And Starlight could go, oh yeah, I am working with terrible people to try and stop other terrible people, so, like, what am I doing? So that could be an actual, like, point of reflection for Starlight, like an actual like moment where she's like, oh, questioning herself, and this other character can be like a physical representation of that. So that could have been more interesting, I think, but they just went the route of making Firecracker a joke, and she is just a fumble of a character, like a complete waste, and honestly probably my least favorite character in the show, if I'm being real. At least major character, like one that has a major impact. So I'm not really excited to see her again in season 5, I will be honest. She should have just stayed in Call of Duty. So, moving on, I guess I should just skip to the shapeshifter right now since we're talking about Starlight. Oh god, actually no. No. There's one thing I want to talk about before that. You can call me a square for what I'm about to say. Feel free to do so. Maybe you just think I'm a big baby, fine. But I think personally, the obsession that these writers have with making every single superhero a sex freak is holding them back creatively. So what do I mean when I say that? Well, since like season 1, it's been pretty much well established that almost every single superhero is a sex freak of some kind. Like, our introduction to superheroes are basically just sex. They are just constantly having sex. They're doing weird fetish stuff. It is constant. It never stops. And it has been a motif at this point, but I think it's holding them back. Maybe them being like sex freaks early on could have been funny 1 or 2 times, but we are 4 seasons in. They have been doing this since season 1. They do it in season 2. They do it in season 3. It is constant, and it's sort of lost its luster. They keep trying to up the stakes when it comes to the sexual freak stuff, and they've already hit a peak. Like, they hit a peak when Termite blew a man's lower half off in, like, the first episode of season 3. You can't really go up from there, so they just kind of keep doing the same sex jokes over and over again, and it's just not funny or interesting anymore. And not only that, it's actively holding their writing back. So, one big example of this, I think, is Tech Knight. So, Gen V is when I first started noticing this problem. Obviously, it had been building before, but Gen V was kind of the tipping point for me, because they were doing sex jokes 24/7, every single episode. 1 sex joke, 2 sex jokes, 3 sex jokes. It's just constant, and it feels like sex jokes are the only kinds they actually know how to do anymore, and it sort of loses its luster very quickly. And Tech Knight is the first example I can think of it actively ruining a character. So, Tech Knight, when he's first introduced in Gen V, is an actually scary villain. His power lets him essentially figure out anybody by looking at like slow, like tiny details on their body. He essentially has super senses, smell, sight, whatever. And he like literally breaks one of the characters down by like pointing out all of their lies just in front of a whole classroom and has them admit to lying like publicly in front of everybody. And it is a very well executed scene, surprisingly. And he is just very scary throughout the whole thing because he like can figure out everything. He wants to like frame people for stuff, and he's gonna get away with it, and you know he's gonna get away with it, and that's actually scary. And then everything falls apart when they reveal he's a sex freak. Like he's really into doing sex stuff, and he gets blackmailed, and it's a joke. And then from that moment on, he's just treated as a joke. Like, oh, he's look at how freaky he's into sex. That's the whole bit. That's his whole character now. So they had something really cool, and then they just went, no sex freak, and that's about it. I know that happened in the comics with Tech Knight, but let's be real. Are we really like going off the comics now? Like they've deviated from those so much that you might as well not. Like Tech Knight does not have jetpack and super armor. You might as well just give him a different arc if you're gonna do that. So like it's gotten to a point where their obsession with making super sex freaks are making characters actively worse. And the biggest example of that is episode 6. So this is the episode for people that made them turn on this season, pretty much. And that is because of what happened to Hughie in it. So, to put it simply, Hughie gets assaulted sexually multiple times in the season. And each time it's not handled in the best way. And it has people going, okay, this show is kind of, I don't really like this anymore. People are essentially turning on it because of that. I did not like the scenes with Tech Knight because the whole joke was, oh, the Batcave's a sex dungeon, which just isn't very interesting. And again, it just falls into, they keep doing sex bits over and over again. And I do want to take a little detour to talk about Webweaver because the potential for a parody of Spider-Man is like nearly endless. There are so many cool things you could do with a Spider-Man parody, and they just went, he does drugs and he's a sex freak. Like every single superhero does drugs, sex freak. That's pretty much the only two bits they have, and it is like holding these characters back. Like they could have done something cool with the Spider-Man knockoff because Spider-Man's a cool character, and they could like look into it a lot and say, oh yeah, what about like what would happen if this teenage superhero got powers and was like attacking people in the streets or whatever. But no, they just went, oh, he's a sex freak, and then killed him off. And they just wasted a potentially cool character, right? So, in episode 6, like, Hughie gets stuck in a sex dungeon, and the bit just goes on for way, way, way too long. It's like half the episode. What they should have done is just had him get tied up and then get saved before anything happens at all. Like, that's the bit. You could be like, oh, something bad's about to happen, but he gets saved at the last moment, so it doesn't actually happen, right? I think that would have been way better. But no, they decide to commit, and they have Ashley down there, and it's just, I'm never going to eat cake again. I can't. I did not. I had to skip that scene because I was just like, maybe you want to call me a square for that, but I just didn't find it funny. And if you don't find it funny, it's just weird. Like it just feels weird and awkward. If the bit does not land, it crashes hard. I'm going to be real. So yeah, the episode 6 stuff, I just don't want to talk about it that much. I didn't like it personally. Probably my least favorite episode out of all of them. Wasn't a big fan of that. All right, what else do we have here? So. Let's talk about politics for a second. Okay, let's stop talking about politics now. Let's talk about Butcher. So, his Logan arc is what I'm calling it, where he's got like the beard, he's slowly dying, he's sick, he's got a child he has to look after. It's essentially like the bit of like old guy has to look after child who is also special in some way. So it's basically just Logan all over again. And I really like Logan, so I end up really liking this arc and his dynamic with Ryan. I think they've gone too much of it's almost like a will they won't they bit with Ryan and Butcher at this point, where Ryan has like so many opportunities to like stick around and be the good guy, and then he just doesn't, predictably. And it's like, he's not going to, because they have a 5th season, so they have to make Ryan go evil and kill Grace, essentially go full Brightburn mode. And we all saw it coming. I'm not really surprised, but I am sad. Butcher is like, oh, I'm so close to being a good person, and then nope, I'm not again, and they just go back and forth. So I'm hoping in season 5 they just commit to him being evil, I'm going to be real, instead of just going back and forth on it over and over again. Just have him commit to, I'm evil, I'm going to kill every single superhero, and that's it, and then they have to stop him, essentially. I think that would be really cool. They should just like commit to either him being evil or not, and stop doing this wishy-washy back and forth stuff. Personally, like they had 3 seasons of that. It's time to stop. Moving on, this is probably going to be my most controversial take in this video. So I might get disagreements on that, but I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and you're gonna sit there and listen. So, okay, this is not my most controversial take. I don't think the bits with Colin and Frenchie are good. I think they're kind of a waste of time and really weird, and I don't think the writing on it was very good. That's not a controversial take. Most people agree with me on that. They just, for some reason, have Kimiko and him break up for no reason at the start of the series, and then we have some new guy we don't know, and then he's hooking up with him. I don't mind Frenchie being, like, bisexual, that's fine, but him hooking up with the person who he murdered their parents, yeah, that's not compelling. That's just, what the fuck, Frenchie? So Colin obviously leaves because, like, no shit, and then him and Kimiko just get back together anyway. It just felt like a huge waste of time, and this is where I get into my controversial take. Kimiko and Frenchie should be benched as characters. They should either be put in their own spin-off show or just leave. And I personally think, like, the bits with Kimiko and Frenchie are just side questing. This show has a side questing problem with these two. It happened in the previous season with the little Nina stuff, where Kimiko and Frenchie have to go off to go do their own little side quest, and it just doesn't connect to the main story, and it's not very interesting, and I don't find myself caring that much about, like, Kimiko's past or Frenchie's past, if I'm going to be real. I like Kimiko and Frenchie, but they're distracting from the main story when they go off to do these side quests, and I just am not as interested in them as I am in what's going on with the main storyline. So I think if they want to do this, Kimiko and Frenchie should just be given a spin-off show like Gen V to go handle that stuff together and just get benched from the boys, because they just keep going off doing their own thing, and usually for half the season they're just either not there or just doing something else, and Frenchie at one point just gets thrown in jail for like a couple episodes and just isn't around. So yeah, it just feels like they're just throwing these guys around and not really using them to their full potential, and I feel like if they had their own show to deal with this, it would be a lot better than like spending time we could be spending on other things in this season. Yeah, that's just my personal take. Maybe you disagree with me on that. I will also say that, oh god, my brain is just getting fried right now. I just don't like the Kamiko and Frenchie bits, if I'm going to be real. But yeah, I like them as characters. I think they're fun. I think Frenchie's a fun character, but he's also like a horrible person, and they kind of made him a psycho in this for some reason. So I feel like he probably should have stayed in jail, if I'm gonna be real, because that man is damaged, very damaged, more damaged than Butcher at this point, honestly. So yeah, it just feels like side quests. Speaking of side quests, Hughie and the scene with his dad. So Hughie is a very contentious point for a lot of people in this season. They feel like they essentially bullied Hughie this entire time, and he's just getting the worst of it because the whole episode 6 stuff, and then also the stuff with the shapeshifter, which, oh boy, the shapeshifter. Okay, yeah, I will talk about that. But Hughie, at one point, has the opportunity. He gets Compound V, and his father is put in the hospital unexpectedly, and he wants to save his father. So he has a choice here. He can give him the V and save him, or potentially turn him into a monster, or like kill everybody in the hospital if he blows up, or he could not give him the V and let him die. And it's a whole bit of him essentially like keeping people around too long, not letting people go, sticking with people even when it makes no sense. And that is a part of Hughie's character that has been well developed at this point. Like when his father talks about like a cat slowly dying, or dog, whatever, slowly dying, and he was just keeping it alive until he died pathetically. What he's talking about there, it really does relate to Butcher. Like Butcher is Jar Jar in that situation. Like slowly dying, he is just turning into a monster, and Hughie just keeps him around because he can't let him go. And maybe season 5 will be Hughie finally go, okay, Butcher's a horrible person. Wait, we need to let him go. It's over. So that would be a pretty good way to sort of wrap up that storyline with him. So he has the opportunity, and he decides not to. Okay, he's made his decision that he doesn't want to essentially do these things. But then they have his mother find the Compound V. His mother shows up, by the way, if you haven't, yeah, whatever. He finds the Compound V and injects his father anyway. And at this point, I think that was a not good decision. The reason I say that is because it is a cop-out. In the plainest terms. So basically, in stories, sometimes there will be a point where characters have to make a decision that is impossible. There's no good answer, right? And the character is so conflicted about this, and they don't know what to do. And then somebody will come in and make the decision for them, essentially robbing them of the chance to make this hard decision and grow as a character. This is one of those times. Hughie made the decision not to, but they still want to do the bit with his father in the hospital with him like phasing through walls and stuff, and that's pretty cool. But if they wanted to do that, they should have had Hughie be the one to inject him. That's essentially what I'm saying with this. So Hughie should have been the one to do it instead of his mother, because if they did that and they had Hughie make the quote unquote bad choice here, essentially what they're saying is the bad choice, give him Compound V. They should have had Hughie made the decision, and when he has to kill his father later, that's more impactful because he did this. He's the one who made it this way. He's the one who hurt all those people because he wanted to save his dad, and he got other people hurt in the process. But they have his mother do it because they don't want Hughie to do that. They don't want Hughie to make the wrong choice. So they do a cop-out. They have somebody else make the decision for him, and that's just not as interesting. So I think if they were going to do the bit with him in the hospital, like phasing through walls, they should have had Hughie actually make the decision to inject his father instead of just copping out. I think that would have made the scene more impactful. I think it's still a good scene with him having to put down his father. It's still good, but it would have been better if they had him actively make the decision. So another thing I want to talk about is A Train's redemption arc. This is going to be a quick one, quick like A Train, maybe. But everyone seems to really, really like A Train's redemption arc. I thought it was all right. Him like, oh, I am a superhero now. I think he has crossed a line though, where he can't really be fully redeemed because he did just straight up murder Popclaw like in cold blood, and then after that, there's not really you can't come back from that one, or Robin, but whatever. So yeah, but they do have him come back. They have him have a cool fight with the Deep and New Black Noir, which New Black Noir is kind of funny. I will be real, but didn't really interest me that much. So yeah, they do some pretty cool stuff with A Train. So I'm glad he's not dead. Everyone thought he was gonna die, like because he had death flags every 5 seconds, but no, he outran the death allegations. A Train managed to escape. It's like the Flash outrunning death. But I don't know if he's gonna make it through season 5. This might be like sunsetting on A Train moment right here. So finally, the shapeshifters. There's a scene where Annie's talking to the shapeshifter, and the shapeshifter is essentially like both takes her form and then does the snoo with Hughie, and that's another time where he gets assaulted. I don't know why they keep assaulting him this season. I don't. Writers, what are you doing? But she essentially gets locked up and is eating Lunchables in like a random warehouse. And the shapeshifter essentially starts going off about how Annie thinks she's the only good one. She thinks she's better than everyone else and that she's narcissistic and all blah, blah, blah. And it's like, who is this shapeshifter talking about? Because it is not Annie. You can't have a character grow if they were never in a position where they needed to grow in the first place. Like, all these traits that she's talking about just haven't been displayed to my knowledge. Like, Annie's not like a narcissistic psychopath. Like, that's just not who she is. So essentially they're like, it's kind of like a reverse Wanda situation where they're trying to make a character who just doesn't look that evil super evil, like she's some kind of evil narcissist, which no, that's not who Annie is. So I don't get why the shapeshifter is doing that. The bit with the shapeshifter was pretty cool when they had them in the bunker. I just think they didn't do much with it, but here's the thing, other than getting close with Hughie and doing some things, the shapeshifter is not really a sex freak, which is surprising to me. They actually made the shapeshifter like just a straight up villain, takes people over, and like just hates humans because she sees all the bad parts of their memories, right? So that's pretty interesting. So I will give them props for doing something interesting and not just going, okay, this person's a sex freak, the end. Yeah. So moving on, the ending, the last episode is probably the best episode in the series. Well, not in this season. Sorry. No, don't kill me. In this series. No, goddamn, I keep saying it. No, in this season. In this season's what I mean, not the whole series. But I thought the ending, where all the Gen V characters come back and the psychic girl comes back, and all the boys are essentially rounded up, Homelander takes control. That's pretty cool. This is a doomsday scenario. I don't know how they come back from this one. If I'm being real, they might be fucked. And Sister Sage comes out and is like, haha, this is all according to Keikaku the entire time. This is all my plan. Just don't worry about it. Which, fine enough, I guess. Uh, so yeah, I did like the ending. I liked the last episode. It wasn't perfect, but it was all right compared to the rest of the season. So, what are my hopes for season 5? One, they kill off Firecracker like first episode, like it just starts with her getting lasered or something. And hopefully they start doing more interesting things with supervillains. They're bringing the Gen V villains back, like Kate and Sam, so maybe they can do something interesting there. Just they this season was probably their biggest fumble, I would say. I feel like season 5 is set up to be a lot better, and I hope they do that. So yeah, that is my talk about the boys. I hope you enjoyed me rambling for so long, but yeah, that's essentially my takes on it. Uh, I just man, I just hate Firecracker. So she just like get the Call of Duty character out of here, guys.